All right, this week's lecture will focus on printing and finishing techniques, and this is something that can be done commercially, and some of these things can actually be done on your own as well on the cheap, and that's something that we will talk about in the next coming weeks. So the basic process, the printing process that is used for printing almost anything, but even on packaging, is four color lithography. And this is the technique used to print full color images or anything that is considered four color process. And that four color process is the layering of those CMYK inks to produce different colors and different shades and get super hyper detail and quality in the work. So this is an example of that four color process. These have obviously been printed on different things, but if we think of just the printing on this kind of cardboard bag, we're printing on this textured paper and the color is allowing that texture of that paper to show through, but we're using those four color processes to print these colors onto the package. And then we have spot color printing. So this is also a lithographic process using limited color of inks. So spot color is typically three or less. Most commonly, spot color is associated with where you're printing mainly like one or two colors, and there's a large amount of white space in whatever you're printing on. So a large amount of white space with a pop of color. This reduces printing costs. Spot color inks can be used to emphasize a brand color. So, for example, if we are McDonald's and we are printing McDonald's red and yellow on a white cup, that red and yellow would be considered the spot color, and we would be using the specially mixed custom Pantone inks for McDonald's red and McDonald's yellow. So here, whoops, sorry guys. Here is an example of a spot color. So we've got a large area of white, and then we're printing just one color blue, two shades of blue, sorry, and then just the black ink. So one kind of spot of color, and that's where those terms come from. We're doing just a small area of color. Next is flexography, and this involves the use of a flexible plate that adapts to printing different textured and dimensional surfaces. So this is ideal for folding cartons, paper sacks, plastic bags, beverage cartons, disposable cups, labels, adhesive tapes, envelopes, and even things like food wrappers. Because when you are printing on a milk carton, for example, you can't, obviously we have not probably assembled that carton yet, but kind of these physical things are a little bit harder to print on, and you have to make sure that the plate flexes so that it applies the ink on all areas of the package. And so, for example, thinking of these bags, if we were running this and using flexography, we could run this through and print directly on these bags. And then we have laser etching. So this is etching, even though it's a laser, it's still considered a printing, but it's a specialty process. And this is the precision printing where we're used to mark or brand a substrate. So, and the substrate is the material that is being printed on. So when we refer to substrate, I'm simply referring to whatever we're printing on. If we're printing on a bag, we're printing on a box, whatever, that is your substrate. And then the computer aids a laser that etches over the surface of a product. So again, things like we can etch things like glass, metal, wood, and plastic. We even have in our makerspace, we have a craft grade laser cutter with a Glowforge that can laser etch and engrave on different things from a small perspective. So here is the laser etching. So you'll notice here on the box we've etched, and so this is not painted. This is literally with the laser we're burning. So think of wood burning if you're familiar with that process. We have etched into these areas. Same here, we've etched the image onto the wood. Okay, then we have screen printing, which is a process that a lot of you may be familiar with, but screen printing, when we're talking about packaging, is just a little bit different. So this is screen printing is one of the most versatile of all printing processes. Instead of those transparent inks, we're using opaque inks that are, forced onto the material by a roller or squeegee through a stenciled mesh screen. So for those of you guys that have experience in screen printing, you are probably familiar with that process. And this is used for printing on things like paper, paperboard, plastics, glass, metals, fabrics, etc. Screen printing is ideal for items that can't be ran through a press, and then screens can be warped to fit around whatever it's being printed on. So for example, we are printing on this frosted glass bottle. We've printed the yellow dot. We've printed the black directly on the bottle. And then we're also attaching these lovely gold foil labels as well. So lots of specialty printing and finishing processes going on here. And then thinking of special techniques, we have gloss varnish, matte varnish, UV varnish, and spot varnish. And I'm not going to get too technical with the varnishes, but essentially what's happening with the varnish is, for example, you print a label and it's just one print of an image, but there's a certain area that you want to apply a gloss or varnish to. That is then a secondary process that we run through. So you're printing and then you run it through another machine to do the varnish. And so the varnish actually has a lot of different attributes. So here on this image, we've done some gold foil, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. And then here you'll see where this hits the light, these little black leaves. They're black, but we've also printed the matte varnish on them, so they have a little bit of a sheen to them. So that is an example of a varnish. And then we get to foil stamping. And with foil stamping, this is a technique that creates dimension on things like cardboard, metal, plastic surfaces. You have the flat foil, and then you have, which is just foil transferred using a metal stamp. And then you have the sculptured foil stamping, which is using a die with more than one level. And this results in a raised finish of that foil. So it looks raised from the surface. So just to show you an example of that, the one on your left here is just the foil stamp, beautiful shiny foil. And then on the right here, it's a little hard to tell from this image, but you'll notice that this looks like it's raised. That is the structural one. So this is just the basic flat and then the structured one. So anywhere where it looks like it's been embossed or debossed, we're using the structured foil. All right, so that is just a quick overview of specialty finishing techniques.